Hello everyone, welcome to Python for Advanced Beginners. If you're new to Python, please watch the Python for Beginners course before taking this course. Our first topic is nested loops. A nested loop is a loop within a loop, and it lets the inner loop complete its repetitions per single repetition of the outer loop. You use a nested loop when you want one action to yield multiple results. For our coding activities, we will create a nested loop, simulate a clock, and generate patterns. In this coding activity, we will create a nested loop. First, we will write an outer loop that iterates 2 times. So let's come here and write our loop. Let's hit enter, and next we will print out the target variable I. So let's make this an F string, and then we'll have it read outer loop. Let's put our placeholder and then the target variable I. Let's hit enter, and next we'll write the inner loop. So let's make this a target variable J, and let's have this loop iterate 3 times. And in the inner loop, let's print out the target variable J. So this will be another F string, but let's put a tab escape character there. And let's have this read inner loop. And let's put the placeholder for J. So let's run our program. And you'll see that on the first iteration, we get our outer loop. And then the inner loop will complete its iterations. And then we come back out to the outer loop for the second iteration. And then the inner loop will complete its iterations. Next, we'll use nested loops to simulate a clock. So we'll write an outer loop to represent our hours. So let's come in here and name the target variable hour, and let's have it iterate 2 times. Hit enter. Now let's write an inner loop to represent the minutes. Let's name the target variable minute, and let's have it iterate 60 times. Hit enter, and let's create another inner loop to represent the seconds. And let's have it iterate 60 times as well. Hit enter. And now we'll write a F string that will combine the hour, minute, and second target variables. So let's come here and let's type our F string. And let's put a placeholder for the hour. Let's put a colon here. Let's put another placeholder for the minute. Type a colon, and one more placeholder for the second. Let's run our program, and you should see our simulated clock. Next, we will use a nested loop to generate a rectangular pattern. So let's write an outer loop that iterates 3 times. Hit enter, and let's write an inner loop that iterates 10 times. Hit enter. Now let's print out an asterisk. So next we will suppress the new line character from the print statement. So type a comma and then type the end keyword argument and assign it single quotes. Hit enter and then hit the backspace key so that you are in the outer loops space or block. So in here we will write a print statement. Now let's run our program. So you see that we have 3 lines. So let me illustrate what's going on here. So the first time we have our outer loop iterating once, and then we're going to have 10 iterations in the inner loop. So for every iteration, we're going to have the asterisk printed out. So once this loop has completed its iteration, then we get to this print statement, which gets us to this new line. And then we resume the outer loop, gets to the second iteration, and the inner loop repeats this again. And that's what we get here. And then we hit this print statement, and that brings us here to this last line. And then we resume the outer loop, and that will complete its last iteration. And then this will repeat 10 times again. We get our asterisks, and then the print, and everything terminates. Next, we'll use a nested loop to generate a triangular pattern. So let's create an outer loop that iterates 5 times. And let's create an inner loop that iterates 5 times as well. Now in the inner loop, let's write a condition. So we're going to say if I, j, type a colon, and hit enter. And in the conditional statements block, let's print out an asterisk. So same as last time, we will suppress the new line character from this print statement. Now hit enter, and hit the backspace key so that you're aligned with the inner loop. So you're now in the outer loops block. So let's go write our print statement. Now let's run the program. And you see that we get our triangular pattern. So the first time I will be 0, and then we will get to here and j will be 0. So the condition is saying is I greater than or equal to 0. So 0 is equal to 0 as in I and j. And then that's how we get this first asterisk. And then we come here, and then j is incremented. And you can see that j will become 1. So I is still 0, and 0 will not be greater than or equal to anything that's 1 or higher. So this statement will never happen. Now we come here, and I will become 1. And then the inner loop starts its iterations again. So at this point, I is 1, and j will be 0. So 1 is greater than or equal to 0. So we get to print an asterisk here. And then we come here, and j will become 1. So I is still 1. So we'll say 1 is greater than or equal to 1. That is true. So we get to print the second asterisk. So it keeps going like this. And this is how we end up with our triangular pattern. Our next topic is nested lists. A nested list is a list within a list, and it can be used to create matrices. For our coding activities, we will create a nested list, access nested list elements, and change nested list element content. In this coding activity, we will create a nested list. First, we'll create a variable. So let's name this row 1. And then let's assign that variable a list of letters. Now we'll create a second list. So let's select this line, copy it, go to the next line and paste. Let's rename this variable as row 2, and let's change the letters. Let's create one more list, rename this as row 3, and change the letters. Now we create our nested list. So let's create a variable named table, and then let's assign it a list, and then we will put lists inside of this list. So let's start with row 1, type a comma, and then row 2. and last, row 3. So that is our nested list. So let's print out our nested list. Let's run our program, and you will see that we now have our nested list. Next, we'll access the items in a nested list. So if we wanted to access the row 1 list, we can see that this is at element 0 of the nested list. So let's come here and type our square brackets and then a 0. Let's go ahead and run our program, and you see that it displays the row 1 list. If we wanted to access row 3, that is at element 2 of the nested list. So we come here, put a 2. Let's go ahead and run our program, and you see that it displays the row 3 list. So if we wanted to access H inside of row 3, we know that row 3 is a list, and H is at element 1 of the row 3 list. We come here, type our square brackets, and then type a 1. Let's go and run our program, and you'll see that that gives us an H. Let's go for another example. So let's say we wanted to access row 2 and then F. So F is at element 2 for row 2, and row 2 is at element 1 of the nested list. So this will be 1, and that will be 2. Let's go run our program, and you'll see that we get the F. Next, we'll replace the items in a nested list. So assuming we wanted to replace I with something else. We know that this is row 3, so that is at element 2, and I is at element 2 of row 3. So we just come here and then type our nested list and then square brackets. So we're going for row 3, so type a 2 there, and then type our square brackets. So we want to replace I. We know that I is at element 2. So let's come here and type that, and then we can go here and assign something else. So I'll just type hello. So we can come here, and then let's access element 2 in the nested list and element 2 of that list. So let's come here and run, and you see that we now have hello replacing I. And we can print out the entire nested list so we can see the full contents. So I'll just get rid of that line. Let's go ahead and run this, and you'll see that hello is taking the place of I. Next, we'll use a loop to change the contents of a nested list. So let's delete these lines, and let's create a list of numbers. So let's have 9 numbers. So we're going to have these numbers replace these letters. So let's go to the next line and then create a variable named index and assign it a value of 0. So index is going to be a counter variable that we will update in our loop. Let's create an outer loop, and let's have it repeat 3 times. Let's create an inner loop and also have it repeat 3 times. So in the inner loop, we're going to access the nested list and change its contents. So let's come here and type table, square brackets I, and then square brackets J. And then let's go ahead and assign it numbers, square brackets, and then index. Let's go to the next line, and then we will increment index. So type index plus equals 1. Let's hit the backspace key, and then let's print out the nested list. Let's run our program. Now you see the numbers have replaced the letters in the nested list, and I'll explain how this is done through the nested loop. So when we start, I will be 0 and J will be 0. So here we are accessing element 0 of the nested list, which is row 1, and we are accessing element 0 of row 1, which is A. So that is going to be our access point. Now we get to the numbers list and access index, which is currently 0. So we're saying access element 0 of the numbers list, which is 1. So 1 will be assigned and then replace A. Then we increment index and index becomes 1. We come here, J will become 1. I is still 0, so we're still at row 1. But now we are accessing element 1 of row 1, which is B. So that is going to be our access point. Now we're going to access element 1 of the numbers list, which is 2. So 2 is going to be assigned, and that will replace B. We increment index. Index will now become 2. We get here, and J will be 2. I is still 0. J is now 2. So we're still at row 1, but now we're accessing element 2 of row 1, which is C. So that will be our access point. And now we are accessing element 2 of the numbers list, which is 3. So 3 will be assigned, and it will take C's place. So the iterations will be complete, and then we come here, and I will now become 1. So we come here, and this will be 1, and J will be 0. So we're now accessing element 1 of the nested list, which is row 2, and we're accessing element 0 of row 2, which brings us here. So numbers is going to be accessed, and index will currently be 3. So we're going to be getting 4. So 4 will be assigned, and then it will take D's place. So this keeps going, and by the time this is completed, this is how we end up with our number replacements. Our next topic is nested dictionaries. A nested dictionary is a dictionary within a dictionary. For our coding activities, we will create a nested dictionary, access nested dictionary elements, and change nested dictionary element content. In this coding activity, we will create a nested dictionary. So first we'll create a variable. So let's name it garage. And then let's assign it a dictionary. And then 3 sets of key value pairs. So we have keys named items 1, 2, and 3, each with string values. So let's select the statement, copy it, and then we will paste and create another dictionary. So let's name this one office. And let's change the values. Now let's select the statement, copy it, and then paste. And let's name this variable kitchen. And we'll change the values as well. So now we have 3 dictionaries. So next we will create the nested dictionary. So let's go to the next line and create a variable named house. And then let's assign it a dictionary. Let's name this key garage. And then let's assign it this variable. So copy garage and then paste it there. And that is a nested dictionary. So let's go and create another key, and we'll name that office. And then let's copy the office variable and paste it. Let's create one more key and name it kitchen. And let's copy the kitchen variable and paste it. And that is our nested dictionary. Now let's print it. And let's run our program. And you'll see the nested dictionary. Next, we'll access a nested dictionary element. So we're going to access the office key of the house nested dictionary. So let's come here next to house and type our square brackets, and then quotes, and then the office key. So let's go ahead and run this, and you see that it displays the contents of the office key, which is this office dictionary. So we're going to access item 3 of the office dictionary. So to do that, we come here and then type square brackets, and then we can put item 3 in there. So let's go ahead and run this. And you see that item 3 is a tablet, and that's what gets output. We can also access dictionary elements using the get method. So let's come here and delete the square brackets and then type .get and then parentheses. And then let's go for the garage key. Let's run our program and you see that the dictionary for the garage is displayed. Now to get item 2 of the garage dictionary, we can just come here and call the get method again. So type .get and then parentheses and then quotes, and in there type item 2. Let's run this and you'll see that item 2, the boiler, is displayed. Next, we'll access the nested dictionary using a loop. So let's come here and delete the print statement. And then let's write our for loop. And then a target variable for the key, type a comma, and then a target variable for the value. And then type in, and then the nested dictionary house. And let's call the items method. Type your colon. Let's go to the next line, and then let's print out the target variables k and v. Let's run our program, and you see that it displays all the contents of the nested dictionary. Next, I'll show you how to remove items from a nested dictionary. So let's select this loop and delete it. And then let's go type house, and we'll call the pop method. And in there, type the key that you want to remove. So we're going to remove the garage. And since this can throw an exception, you can put a message to specify what happens if the key is not found. Let's go to the next line, and then let's print out the house. Let's run our program, and you should see that the garage key has been removed from the house nested dictionary. Next, I'll show you how to remove a key value pair from a nested dictionary. So assuming we wanted to remove item 2 of this kitchen dictionary, we can come here right next to house and call the get method. And in there, let's pass the key kitchen. Now with the pop method, we can specify the key, item 2. And then here, let's display the contents of kitchen. So we're going to say .get and then kitchen. Let's run our program. And you see that item 2 has been removed from the kitchen dictionary. Our next topic is files. Python supports reading and writing text files and binary files. File modes indicate how to work with existing files or new files. The file modes in Python are W for write, R for read, and A for append. W mode allows you to write data to a file. R mode allows you to read data from a file, and A mode allows you to append data to an existing file. Python offers methods for working with files, and they are the open method, read, readline, write, and the close method. The open method creates a file or opens an existing file. The read method reads data from a file as a string. The readline method reads individual lines from a file that is separated by a new line character. The write method writes data to a file, and the close method closes the connection to a file to free up computer memory. The with statement is used in place of the close method to automatically close a file connection. For our coding activities, we will write data to a file, read data from a file, read lines from a file, append data to a file, write numbers to a file, read numbers from a file, use loops to write and read lines, use the with statement, and handle a file exception. In this coding activity, we will create a file and write text to it. So let's create a variable named file and assign it the open function. So in there, we specify the name of the file that we want to create. So let's name this fruits.txt. Let's type a comma and specify how we want to work with the file. So we're going to write to the file. So this is going to be a mode of W. Let's go to the next line and write text to the file. So type file, and then we'll call the write method. So in there, let's put a string and let's write apple. And let's put a new line character so that any text that comes after that will be placed on a new line in the file. So let's select this line, copy it, go to the next line and paste. Let's name this banana. Let's go to the next line and paste again. And let's name this carrot. So once we're done writing to the file, we want to close the connection to the file. So we come here and we'll say file.close. So this is important so that it can free up any memory that is taken by referencing the file. So let's run our program. And then when you come here and click on the Explorer, you see that the fruits.txt file has been created. So you can go ahead and click on that, and you can see all the strings have been written to the file. Next, we'll read data from a file. So let's come here and create a variable named file and assign it the open function. Let's specify the name of the file we created, which is fruits.txt. And let's set the mode to R, as in read. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named file_data. And then let's assign it this statement, file.read. So this will read the contents from the file as a string. So let's go to the next line and then close the file. Now let's display the contents that were pulled from the file. So let's write our print function and then pass in file data. Let's run our program. And you see that the contents from the file have been retrieved and displayed. In this coding activity, we will read individual lines from a file. So let's come here and create a variable to reference our file. So it's going to be fruits.txt again. And let's set the mode to R. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named line1. And then let's assign it file.readLine. So this will read the first line from the file. So let's come here and close the file for now. Let's go here and print line 1. Let's run our program. And you see that this prints out just one line. Now let's go read a second line. So copy this and paste. Let's name this variable line2. And then let's copy the print function and then paste and name this line2 as well. Let's go run our program. And you see it prints the second line. So you notice that there is an extra line break coming from the print function as well as the line break that's attached to the string in the file. So we can go and strip that. So right next to line 1, just type dot or strip and parentheses. So inside of the parentheses, let's put the new line character. So this will strip out the line break attached to the apple string. So let's do the same thing for line 2. So that'll be dot or strip. Now let's go run our program. And you see that that takes out the extra line break. Next, I'll show you how to append text to an existing file. So let's go reference our file. So we'll say file and then assign it open again and fruits.txt. Now this time, let's set the mode to A as an append. And then let's go type file and then dot write. And then let's put a string in there. We can call this dates. Let's put a new line character. Let's go write another string to the file. So copy that line, paste, and then let's change this to fig. Let's go close the file. Now let's run our program. Let's open up the Explorer and then click on the file. And then you see that the two strings have been appended to the file. Next, we'll create a file and write numbers to it. So let's come here and create a file named sales.txt. Let's set the mode to write. Now let's create some variables for our numbers. So I'll call this sale1 and assign it a number. You can copy this line and then let's go paste, and then let's name this sale2, and you can change the number. Let's paste again, and you can change the number as well. Next, we'll write the numbers to the file. So before you can write a number to a file, you have to convert it into a string, and this can be done using the string function. So let's come here and write our first number converted to a string. So we'll say file, and then we'll call the write method. And then let's type str, that's the str function. And inside of there, we pass the number, which will be converted into a string. So let's copy sale1 and paste it there. And we can also combine that with a new line character. So type plus, and then quotes, and then a new line character. So let's select this line, copy it, paste, change this to sale2. Let's paste again and change this to sale3. Next, let's close the file. And then let's go run our program. And you should see that it creates the sales.txt file. Let's go ahead and click on that, and you'll see that the string numbers, or the numbers converted into strings, have been written to the file. Next, we'll read numbers from a file. So let's reference our sales.txt file. Let's set the mode to read. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named sale1. So we're going to assign it the first number from the file. So these are actually strings, not numbers. So we're going to be using them for math, so we need to convert them into actual numbers. So let's type the float function. And in there, let's read the first line. So we'll say file.readLine. Type in parentheses. So let's select this line and copy it, and then paste. Let's change this variable to sale2. Let's paste again and change this to sale3. So the lines will be read and converted into floating point numbers. Let's go to the next line and close the file. Now let's print out the sale1, 2, and 3 variables. So we use an f string. So we'll say sales, and then let's put placeholders for those variables. So this will be sale1. Let's type a comma. Let's put another placeholder. This will be sale2. Type another comma. One more placeholder for sale3. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named total. And then let's assign it the sums of sales 1, 2, and 3. And let's print out the total. So we'll use an f string, and we'll label it total, and give it a $sign. And then let's put a placeholder for total. Let's run our program. And you should see the sales and the sum. Next, we'll use a loop to write text to a file. So let's come here and create a file named scores.txt. Let's set the mode to write. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named quit, and then let's assign it a value of false. So this variable is going to be used to control our loop. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named scores, and then assign it an empty string. So this variable is going to append our input. So let's go to the next line and create our loop. And we're going to say while not quit. Type a colon and then hit enter. Let's go collect our input. So we're going to say score equals, and then we're going to collect an int. So we're going to say int and then parentheses, and then the input function. And now let's give it a prompt of enter a score. Now let's go to the next line and write a condition that's going to determine the duration of our loop. So we're going to say if score is less than 0, let's type a colon. So if this condition is true, we will set quit to true. So if we enter a negative number, then we will terminate this loop. Let's hit enter, and then let's type continue. And now we'll resume the loop and then terminate it. So let's hit enter here and make sure that you are flush with the if statement. So you're outside of the if statement. And then we will append our input to the scores variable. So type scores and then plus equals. And then we will convert the int into a string using the str function. So type str, parentheses, and in there we'll pass score. So let's go and combine this with a new line character. So type plus, and then the new line character. So let's hit enter, and then let's hit the backspace key so that we're outside of the loop. And then we're going to write the scores variable to the file. So type file.write. And then in there, type scores, hit enter, and then let's close our file. So let's run our program. So you'll be prompted to enter a score. So let's put in a number. And 44 is a positive number. So as long as we enter a positive number, we will keep being prompted to enter a score. So once we're done, we can enter anything less than a 0. So I'll just put a -1 and then hit enter. Now let's open up the Explorer, and you see our scores.txt file. Let's go ahead and click on it, and you see that all the scores that we entered have now been written to the file. Next, we'll use a loop to read the contents of a file. So let's reference our scores.txt file. Let's set the mode to read. Let's go to the next line and create a variable name line. And then let's assign it the first line from the file. So we use the readLine method. So we're going to use this line variable in our loop. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named total and assign it 0.0. So the total variable is going to be used to sum our scores. Let's go a few lines down and create our loop. So we're going to use a while loop, and we're going to say while line is not equal to an empty string, and then a colon. So as long as line is not equal to an empty string, the loop will run. So let's go to the next line, and then let's print out line. And then let's strip out the new line character. So we'll use the rstrip method. And then in the parentheses, type your new line character. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named score. And then let's assign it the line variable converted into a floating point number. So we're going to say float, parentheses, and then line. Let's go to the next line and then append the score to the total variable. So we're going to say total plus equals score. Let's select this line and copy it, and then go back into the loop and paste. And now I'll read the next line. So when we get to the end of the file, it's going to return an empty string. And when that happens, our loop will terminate. Let's hit enter and hit the backspace key and then close our file. Let's go to the next line and print the total. So we use an F string. Let's run our program, and you'll see the scores and the total. Next, we use the with statement to create a file, open it, and automatically close it. So let's come here and type with, and then the open function. Let's create a file named numbers.txt. Let's set the mode to write. Let's come here and type as and then file. So this will be the variable that references the file. So type a colon and then hit enter. And here let's create a for loop that repeats 5 times. Let's go inside the loop and then we will write I to the file. So let's type file and then .write. So in there we'll use an F string. And then let's put our placeholder for I. And then let's put a new line character. Let's run our program. And then let's open the Explorer and you should see the numbers.txt file. And the target variable values are written to the file. Next we'll handle a file exception. So let's create a variable named filename, and then let's assign it the input function. Let's create a prompt that reads enter a file name. Let's go to the next line and create our try except statement. So next to accept, let's specify the file not found error exception, and then type a colon. Let's go in our try block, and then let's use the with statement. So in the open function, copy and paste the file name variable. Type a comma, and let's set this mode to read. Let's come here and type as, and then file, and then colon. Let's go to the next line. Let's create a variable named file data. And then let's assign it the contents of the file. So we'll say file.read. Let's go to the next line and print file data. Let's go in our except block and print the message that gets displayed if the file is not found. So we'll use an F string. And let's create a placeholder for file name. And we can say file was not found. Let's run our program. And then you can enter the name of any of the files you've created. So I'll go for fruits.txt. Hit enter. And you see that the contents of the file are displayed without any issues. Let's rerun the program. And this time enter a name of a file that you have not created. So I'll go for abc.txt. Hit enter, and we'll get the error message that the file was not found. Our next topic is strings. A string is a collection of keyboard characters. A string is immutable, meaning that once it's created, it cannot be changed. However, it can be regenerated. Strings can be combined to form a new string, and strings can be iterated with a loop. The ways to work with strings in Python are by testing them, modifying them or regenerating them, and searching for them and replacing them. Here are string testing methods in Python. Here are string modification methods. And here are string search and replace methods. I'll explain these methods once we begin our coding activities. For our coding activities, we will iterate a string, access string elements, count string elements, concatenate strings, slice a string, search a string, and use string methods. In this coding activity, we will iterate a string. Strings are like lists in that the characters of a string are assigned to their own element. And with that, we can iterate the string using a loop. So let's come here and create a variable name message. And let's assign it the string hello world. Next, we will create a for loop that will iterate the string. So let's come here and say for target variable I, keyword in, and we'll use the message variable as our iterable. So select message, copy it, come here and paste, type your colon, hit enter, and then let's print out I. Let's run our program. So you see that the string is iterated through, and for each iteration, a character from the string is printed out. Next, we'll access the elements of a string using indexing. So I mentioned that a string is like a list in that each character is assigned to their own element. So just make sure you have a variable with a string assigned to it. So in this example, we're going to access the letter H. So H is at index 0. So let's come here and print message, square brackets, and then a 0. Let's run our program, and you can see that that retrieves H. So if I wanted to get the letter O, the first O, this is at index 4. So let's change the 0 to a 4. Let's run our program, and you see that that displays O. So if you wanted to get the last character in your string, you can use a negative number. So let's come here and change this to -1. So that just means get the last element in the string. So let's run this, and you see that I get the exclamation mark. If I change this to 2 and then run, you see that I get the letter D. Now, if you come here and put in an index that does not exist, so I'll change this to 20. So when we come here and run, you see that I end up with an index error. So this is how you access string elements. Next, we'll get the length of characters in a string. So just create a variable and assign it a string. So let's come here and let's print, and then we'll call the len function. So inside of there, copy message and then paste. And when you run this, you see that the number here is the total number of characters that make up the string, including the white space. Next, I'll show you the different ways you can combine strings. So let's come here and create a variable named first name, and then you can assign it any string. So I'll go with John. Let's select this statement, copy it, go to the next line, and change this variable name to last name. And you can change the value to Doe. Let's go here, create another variable named full name, and then we'll assign it a combination of the first name and last name variables. So let's get first name, copy it, come here and paste, and then type plus. And then type quotes in a space, and then let's get last name, copy that, come here, type a plus, and then paste it. So you can use the plus operator to combine strings. Let's go to the next line and print the full name. Let's run our program, and you see that we have first name combined with the space and then combined with the last name to give us this output. So the second way you can combine strings is using the comma. So when you use a comma, it'll place a white space between the strings automatically. So let's come here and replace full name with first name, and then type a comma, and then last name. So let's go ahead and run our program, and you see that the white space is placed between the first name and the last name values. So you can use the plus equal operator to also combine strings or append a string to another string. So let's come here and get rid of the print statement. And then we are going to take first name, copy that, and come here and paste. And then type plus equals, and then quotes. And then put a space between the quotes. So this is going to append the white space to first name, and this will become John and then a space. So let's go to the next line and paste first name again, which is currently John in a space. And then type plus equals, and then we'll combine that with last name. So let's go to the next line and then print first name. Let's run our program, and you see that we get the first name combined with the space and the last name as our output. Next, I'll show you how to slice a string. String slicing lets you extract part of a string using an index range. This part is also called a substring. So let's create a variable and assign a string to it. So we'll come here and call the variable name and assign it the string John Doe. Now let's create our first slice. So let's create a variable named last name and then equals. So to create a slice, you specify the variable that is assigned a string. So we'll go for name and then square brackets. And then in the brackets, you specify your slice range. So I'd like to slice the last name, DOE. So D is at element 5. So we'll come here and type a 5 and then type a colon. And I like to have this end at E. So E is at element 7. But what we do here is we type in 8. We go one element higher. So what this means is generate a slice starting from element 5 up to but excluding 8. So this is going to give us elements 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to have a range of 5 to 7 for the elements. So let's come here and then print the last name. Let's go ahead and run, and you should see that we get our slice. So let's create more slices. So I'm going to come here and delete these, and then let's print out name, and then square brackets, and in there type a colon, and then a 4. So what this means is generate a slice starting from element 0 up to but excluding 4. So J is at 0, O is at 1, H is at 2, N is at 3, white space is at 4, which is going to be excluded. So let's come here and run, and you see that we get the first name. Let's come here and get rid of the 4. And before the colon, type a 5. So what this means is generate a slice starting at element 5 all the way to the end of the string. So let's come here and run, and you see that we get the last name displayed or sliced. So let's come back here and get rid of the 5. So when you don't have a number on either side of the colon, it's just going to give you the entire string as your slice. So let's come here and run, and you see that I get the full name. We could also use negative numbers in our slicing. So let's come here and then type -2. So what this means is include the last 2 characters from the string and then exclude everything else. So let's come here and run, and you see that we only get O and E. Let's come here, delete that, and then let's put a -2 after the colon. So this is the opposite. So this will exclude the last 2 characters at the end of the string. So let's come here and run, and you see that O and E are excluded from the slice, but the rest are included in the slice. You can change the step value of a slice from the default value of 1, which ensures elements within the slice range are accounted for. So let's come here and add a second colon and change this to 2. So this will generate a 2-step slice. So it's going to come here and start at element 0, and then take 2 steps to element 2, and then 2 steps to element 4, and so on. Now let's run our program, and you'll see the 2-stepped slice. We can change the start position of the 2-step slice by coming here and then typing a number. So let's go for element 1. So this is going to start the slice at element 1, take 2 steps to element 3, and so on. Let's run our program, and here you'll see the 2-step slice starting at element 1. And you can change the step value to a negative number. So let's come here and delete the 1 and replace the 2 with a -1. So this will start the slice at the end of the string and then move from right to left. So let's come here and run our program, and you see that we end up with a slice that shows the string reversed. Next, we'll check if a substring is in a string using the in operator. So let's come here And just make sure that you have a variable with a string assigned to it. And let's create another variable called substring. And then let's assign it the input function. And let's have this have a prompt of enter substring. Now let's go to the next line. And then let's write a condition to check if the input is in the name string. So type your if statement and then substring in and then name. So if this is true, we can print an F string. And if this is false, we can print a different message. Let's run our program. So let's start with any of the letters in this name. So I'll go here and type a D and hit enter. And you can see it says D is in John Doe. Let's run it again. And this time let's type something that's not in the string. So I'll go for an X. And you can see I get the alternate message, X is not in John Doe. We could also use the not in operator, which is the inverse of in. So let's come here and type not space and then in. And let's just change the messaging. So here we can just reverse this to say not in and then change that to in. Let's run our program. So let's type an X and I get this message here. And let's run it again. And then type something that's in the string. I'll go for O. And I get the message from the else statement. Next we'll cover string methods for testing strings. So the first method we'll cover is the isAlNum method. So this checks if a string contains alphabets and numbers. So let's create a variable with a string that contains alphabets and numbers. And then let's go here and write the print function. And in there we'll just say my string. That's the name of the variable. And then we'll use it to call the isAlNum method. So this will return a Boolean value of true if the string contains letters and numbers. So let's run our program. And you see that we get true. The next method is the isAlpha method. So this returns true if the string contains only alphabets. So let's come here and get rid of the numbers. And then let's change this to isAlpha. Let's run our program and you should get true. The next method is the isDigit method. So this returns true if the string contains only numbers. So let's come here and replace the letters with just numbers. And then let's change this to isDigit. Let's run our program and you'll see that we get true. The next method is the isLower method. So this returns true if all the alphabets in the string are lowercase. So let's come back here and replace this with lowercase letters. And now let's change this to isLower. Let's run our program and you should see true. The next is the isUpper method. So this will return true if the string contains only uppercase letters. So let's come here and replace these with uppercase letters. And now let's change this to isUpper. Let's run and you should see true. And the last method is the isSpace method. So this returns true if the string contains only white space characters. So let's come here and replace these with just white space characters. We can also put a new line character and a tab as well. So let's come here and then change this to isSpace. Let's run our program and you should get true. Next, we'll cover string modification methods. So the first method I'll cover is the lower method, and this returns a copy of a lowercase string. So let's come here and create a variable and assign it a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named result. And then let's assign it the call to the method. So we'll type my string, and then let's call the lower method. So this here will return a copy of this string converted to lowercase letters, and it will assign the result here. Let's go ahead and print that out. Let's run our program, and you should see the lowercase string. Our next method is the lstrip method. This returns a copy of a string with all leading white space removed. So let's come here and add white space at the start of the string and change this to lstrip. Let's run our program, and you see that all white space at the start of the string is removed. We can also use the lstrip method to remove characters at the start of a string. So let's come here and type quotes and then put a hashtag in there. And then let's replace the white space here with all hashtags. Let's run our program, and you see that the hashtags are taken out from this copy. We also have the rstrip method, which removes trailing white space. So let's come here and delete the hashtags. And then let's put some white space at the end of the string. Let's replace this with an R, so it's rstrip, and let's delete this. So this will remove the white space at the end of the string. So let's run our program, and you see that the white space at the end is taken out. We can also come here and then add a character. So I'll go for $. And now let's come here at the end of the string and replace the space with $signs. Let's run our program, and you see that the $signs at the end of the string are stripped. Next, we have the strip method, which removes trailing and leading white space from the string. So let's come here and add white space at the end and white space at the start of the string. And then let's change this by removing the R and making that the strip method. Let's get rid of this, and then let's run our program. And you see that the leading and trailing white space are removed. We can also come here and add a character. So I'll go for the percentage symbol, and then we can just come here and replace the white space at the start with that symbol, and then come here and do the same here. Let's run our program. And you see that it strips the percentage symbol or sign at the start and at the end of the string. Next, we have the title method, which returns a copy of a string where the first letter of every word is in uppercase. So let's come here and just type a string. We can say I know nothing. And then we can come here and replace this with title. Let's run our program, and you see that I is uppercase, K is uppercase, and N is uppercase. Next, we have the swap case method, which returns a copy of a string where the lowercase letters are swapped with uppercase letters and vice versa. So let's come here and change this I to an uppercase I. Let's change this N to an uppercase N, and you can mix this up to your liking. So I have 3 uppercase letters in this sentence, and then let's change this to swap case. Let's run our program. And here you see that the 3 uppercase letters are now lowercase, and everything else is uppercase. Next, we have the split method, which will build a list from a string that has white space. So here we can use this example. So this sentence has 2 white space characters. So when we use the split method to convert this into a list, I, no, and nothing will be placed in their own element. So let's come here and replace swap case with split, and let's run our program. And here you can see that I, no, and nothing are now assigned to their own element. Last, we have the join method, which returns a copy of a list converted into a string with the values separated by a delimiter. So let's create a variable and assign it a list. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named result, and then assign it the join call. So we start with quotes, and then we put our delimiter in the quotes. So this comma is going to separate the list items once they are converted into a string. So after that, let's type a dot and then join, and then parentheses. Let's copy the variable for the list and paste it in the join methods parentheses. Let's go to the next line and print out the result. Let's run our program, and here you'll see that the list has been converted into a string with each item separated by the comma. Next, we'll cover string search and replace methods. So let's create a variable and assign it a string. The first method we'll go over is the ends with method. So this returns true if a string ends with a substring. So let's come here and type result for the variable, and then let's assign it a call to ends with. So we're going to say my string dot ends with. So inside of the ends with methods parentheses, let's type quotes, and then we're going to check and see if our string ends with 1, 2, 3. So let's come here and type that. Let's go to the next line, and then let's print out the result. Let's run our program, and you see that we get true. Next is the find method. So this returns the lowest index of a string where the substring is found, or it'll return a -1 if that substring is not found. So let's come here and replace ends with find. So we have ABC 1, 2, 3. So 1 is at element 3 of the string. So let's come here and run our program. And you see it gives us that. So if we go put in something else, so I'll go put in an X here, and then go run this, and you see that I get a -1. Next we have the starts with method. So this is the opposite of ends with. So it checks if a string starts with a substring, and it'll return true if that's the case. So let's come here and replace find with starts with. And then let's change this to ABC. Let's run our program. And you can see we get true. And the last method is the replace method, which returns a copy of a string with all instances of the old string replaced by a new one. So what we're going to do is replace 1, 2, 3 with XYZ. So let's come here and type replace, and then let's go in here and we will specify what we want to replace. So that will be the old substring. Now let's come here and type a comma, and we specify what we want to replace it with. So this is going to be the new substring. So I'll go for XYZ. Let's come here and run, and you'll see that 1, 2, 3 is now being replaced with XYZ. Our next topic is sets. A set is a collection of unique values. Sets are mutable, unordered data structures, and sets are generated through iterables such as lists, tuples, or strings. Here are some set methods, and I will explain these methods once we begin our coding activities. For our coding activities, we will create a set, count set items, add set items, update a set, remove set items, iterate a set, and search a set. In this coding activity, we will create a set. Now recall that a set must contain an iterable, which could be a list, a tuple, or a string. So in here, we will create a set out of a list. Let's create a variable named myIterable, and let's assign it a list of strings. Next, let's create the set. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named mySet, and let's assign it the set function. Next, let's copy the iterable and paste it in the set functions parentheses. So select my iterable, copy it, and paste. And that creates a set. Next, let's print the set. Let's run our program, and you'll see our set. You also notice that the items in the set are unordered. Next, we'll create a set out of a tuple. So let's come here and replace these square brackets with parentheses. Let's run our program, and you see the set. Next, we'll create a set out of a string. So let's come here and replace these with a string. Let's run our program, and you'll see our set. So recall that sets ignore duplicates. So let's test that by putting some duplicate values in this string. So I'll go for AA, BB, and CC. Let's run our program, and you see that the duplicates are ignored. If you pass more than one argument to the set function and run your program, you will get a type error. So let's demonstrate that. Let's come here and type a comma and pass the second argument as a string. Let's run our program, and you see that we get a type error. So when using the set function, you must pass only one argument. Next, we'll count set elements using the len function. So let's replace this with a tuple. And let's delete this second argument and the comma. Let's select my set and cut it. And in there, type the len function. And in the parentheses of the len function, paste my set. Let's run our program. And you see that I get 3 items. Next, we'll create an empty set and add items to it. So let's create a variable named number set. Let's assign it the set function. Let's copy number set, go to the next line and paste, and let's call the add method. So the add method is used to add items to the set. So let's add a number to it. Let's select this line and copy it, go to the next line and paste, and add a different number. Let's go to the next line and paste again and add one more number. Let's print the set, and let's run our program. And you see the numbers added to the set. Next, we'll update a set using the update method. So let's create a set of numbers. So let's create a variable named number set. Let's assign it a set function. And in the parentheses of the set function, let's pass a list of numbers. Let's copy number set. Let's go to the next line and paste, and then we'll call the update method, which updates the set. So in the parentheses of the update method, you pass your iterable. So let's add another list of numbers. Let's print the set. And let's run our program. And you see that the set has been updated with the new numbers. Next, we'll remove elements from a set. So let's come before the print statement. And then let's say number set and then remove. Let's put in a number that's in the set. So I'll go for 6. Let's run our program. And you see the 6 has been removed from the set. Now, if you attempt to remove an item that is not in the set, so I'll change this to 60 and run the program, you see that I get a key error. The other way you can remove an item from a set is using the discard method. So let's come here and replace remove with discard. And let's take out 5 from the set. Let's run our program. And you see it removes 5 from the set. Now if you come here and change this to 50 and run the program, you see that it does not give you an error like the remove method. In this coding activity, we will iterate a set with a loop. So what I have here is a list and a set generated from that list. So let's come here and create a for loop. So type for, and let's name the target variable number. And then in, select my set, and copy it, and then paste. And then type your colon and hit enter. And let's print number. Let's run our program. And you see that this iterates the set. Next, we'll use the in and not in operators to check for items in a set. So make sure that you have a list and a set generated from that list. So let's come here and create a variable. And then let's assign it a number from the set. So I'll go for 2. Let's come here and write a condition to check if that number is in the set. So type if number, and then the in operator, and then my set. Type a colon, and then let's print out an F string. Let's run our program. And you see that it says that the number 2 is in the set. So let's come here and change this to not in. And then let's change this to a different number. So I'll go for 25. And then let's change this to is not in the set. Let's run our program. And you see that we get that 25 is not in the set. Next, we'll use the union method to merge 2 sets as one. So I'd like you to create 2 sets. And right here I have set A, which is assigned a set generated from a list. And the same goes for set B. So let's go here and create a variable named mySet. And then let's assign it set A. And let's use set A to call the union method. And in the parentheses, select set B. Copy that and paste. So this statement will merge set A and set B as one. So let's go print out my set. Let's run our program. And you see that we have our merged set. So another way that you can merge sets is by using the vertical pipe operator. So let's come here and then get rid of the union call. And then just type a vertical pipe. And after that, type set B. Now let's run our program. And you see that we get the same effect. Next, we have the intersection method, which will generate a set from values found in two sets. So let's come here and change this to B and change that to C. So set A and set B both have B and C. So let's come here and get rid of that. And let's call the intersection method. And in the parentheses, let's copy set B and paste that there. Now let's run our program. And you see that a set has been generated, giving us B and C. So another way that we can do the intersection is by using the ampersand. So let's come here and get rid of that. And then type your ampersand and then set B. Let's run our program. And you see that we get the same effect. Next, we have the difference method. So this generates a set using unique values from one set compared to another set. So let's come here and change this to 99. So when you compare set A to set B, you see that the values unique to set A are A and C because these are not in set B. So let's come here and change this to the difference method. And let's copy set B and paste that there. Now let's run this. So you'll see that a set is generated, giving us A and C, which are unique to set A. So another way to write this, so let's come here and then set B. Let's run our program. And you see we get the same effect. Next, we have the symmetric difference method. So this generates a set using unique values found in both sets. So let's come here and change this to A. Now set A and B both have A and B. So the letter C is unique to set A and 99 is unique to set B. So let's come here and delete that and call the symmetric difference method. Let's get set B, copy that, and paste that here. Let's run our program. And you see we get C and 99 in the set. So another way to write this is using the caret symbol. So let's come here and delete that and type the caret and then set B. Let's run our program. And you see that we get the same effect. Next, we'll use the issUperset method. So a superset contains all elements of another set. So right here I have two sets, and set A has A, B, C, and 99. And you see that set A has exactly the same values in set B, which makes set A superset. So let's come here and write our print function. And then we will check to see if set A is a superset of set B. So type set A. And then we'll call the isSuperset method. Type your parentheses. Let's get set B, and copy that, and paste that there. Let's run our program. And you see that we get a Boolean value of true. So if we went in here and changed this to 2, and ran this again, you'll see that we get false because 2 is not in set A. And last, we have the isSubset method. So this checks if a set contains elements from a subset. So let's come here and then change this back to 99. And then let's have this read as set B. And now let's change this to subset. And then let's change this to set A. So set B has A, B, and 99, which are present in set A. So let's come here and run this, and you see that we get true. So if we went and changed this to 2, and then ran this again, you see that it's false because 2 is not present in set A. So if we went in here and added 2 there, and ran this again, you see that we get true. Our next topic is modules. A module is a file that contains Python code such as classes, functions, and so on. The main benefit of using modules is it separates your classes and functions from your main code. You can use Python standard library modules such as math, string, random, and so on. Or you can create your own custom modules. When naming modules, you should follow the same rules as when naming variables, and your module file names must end in the .py file extension. The import statement is used to import a module, and modules should be written separately from your main code in your own file. The from import statement is used to specify or select what to import from a module, such as a function in a module. This prevents importing the entire module into your program, and this also allows you to call the functions in the module directly. And aliases are used to rename imported modules. For our coding activities, we will use the math module, generate random numbers with the random module, define and import a custom module, use the from import statement, and use an alias. In this coding activity, we will use the math module. First, we'll import the math module. So let's come here and type import, space, and math. Let's hit enter a few times. So the first method we'll use from the math module is the sqrt method, and this calculates the square root. Let's type our print function, and in there type math.sqrt, parentheses, and in the parentheses type a 9. So this will calculate the square root of 9. Let's run our program, and you see we get 3. Next method is the floor method. So this will round a decimal number down to an integer. Let's replace this with floor. And then let's come here and change this to 9.6. Let's run our program. And you see that it rounds down to 9. The next method is the ceil method. Now this is the opposite of floor. So this will round to a higher integer. So let's come here and replace floor with ceil. We can change this to 9.2. Let's run our program. And you see we get 10. And the last method is the factorial method. So this will calculate the factorial of a number. Let's replace ceil with factorial. And let's change this to 5. Let's run our program. And you see we get 120. Next, we'll use the random module. So the random module provides methods for generating random numbers. Let's import it. So type import space random. So the first method we'll use from the random module is the randint method. So this generates a random integer from a start value to a stop value. So let's come here and write our print function. And in the parentheses type random dot randint, parentheses. So let's generate a random number from 1 to 10. So let's come here, type a 1, a comma, and then a 10. So 1 is our start value and 10 is the stop value. So let's run our program, and you should see a random number from 1 to 10. Now let's run this again, and you may get a different random number from 1 to 10. Next, we have the randrange method. So this generates a random number, but excludes the stop value. So let's come here and replace randint with randrange. Let's come here and get rid of the 1. So this will generate a random number from 0 to 9. So let's run our program. And you should see I get a 9. You may get a different number. So when you keep running this, we should get a random number from 0 to 9. Let's come here and add back the start value of 1 and type a comma. So this will give us a random number from 1 to 9. So you can run and you may see the 1. Next, we will generate a stepped random number. So let's come here and replace the 1 with a 0. And right after the comma, type 51 and type a comma. So what's going to happen is we now have 10 as the step value. So we're going to end up with a random number such as 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50. So let's run our program. And you see here I get a 20. So keep running it, and you should see that you get one of those stepped random numbers. Next, we have the random method. So this will generate a random floating point number. So let's come here and replace this with random. And let's delete these numbers. So this will generate a random floating point number from 0.0 up to but excluding 1.0. So let's come here and run our program. And you should see that we get our random floating point number within that range. And last, we have the uniform method. So this too will generate a random floating point number, but we get to specify a start and stop value. So let's come here and replace random with uniform. And let's have the start value be 1.0, type a comma, and I'll enter a stop value of 6.0. So this will generate a random number from 1.0 to 6.0. Let's run our program. And keep running it, and you should see your random floating point number within that range. Next, we'll create a custom module. So we'll do this by creating a .py file. So let's go here to File, click on New Text File, click on Select a Language, search your Python, hit Enter, and then let's save this file as circle.py. So this file will contain two functions. One returns the circumference of a circle and the other the area of a circle. So let's import the math module. And let's define our first function. So type def, and that will be circumference, and then parentheses. So in the parentheses, let's create a parameter named radius. Type a colon. And in the body of the function, let's return the formula for calculating the circumference. So that will be return, and then 2 multiplied by math.py, and then multiplied by radius. Let's define the second function. So type def, and this will be area, and in the parentheses, type radius, type your colon, and in the body, let's return the formula for that. So type return, and then this will be math.py multiplied by radius, and that'll be raised to the power of 2. So that'll be 2 asterisks, and then a 2. Save the .py file. So now we've created our module. We can now import it and use one of the functions from it. So let's switch to our main program, and then let's import the circle module. So type import circle. Let's hit enter. Next, we will collect input for the radius. So type radius for the variable, and then let's assign it the int function. And in there, let's type the input function. And let's have the prompt read enter a radius. Let's go to the next line. And let's create a variable named result. And let's assign this a call to the area function. So let's type our circle module, and then dot area, parentheses. So in there we pass the radius. So copy radius and paste it. Let's hit enter and write a print statement using the f string. Now let's run our program. And let's enter a number. So I'll go for 100 for the radius and hit enter. And you see we get that result for the area. So that takes care of importing the module and using a function from it. Next, we'll use the from import statement. So let's select this line and replace it with from, and then circle, import, and we'll select the area function. Let's select this circle and dot and delete that. And we can just refer to the area function directly because of this from import statement. So let's run our program, and you'll see that it prompts for the radius, and we can enter a number, and we get the area. And last, we will create an alias for our module. So let's select this line and replace it with import circle as, and let's create an alias of CIR. Let's come here and replace this with CIR, the alias, and then dot circumference. And let's replace this with circumference as well. Let's run our program and enter a radius, and you get your circumference. Our next topic is packages. A package is a container that organizes related modules. Packages prevent module import conflicts, which occurs when two or more packages with the same name in the same directory are imported. Packages use the init.py file for package initialization, namespace declaration, and subpackaging support. Packages must also include the init.py file so that Python can register the directory as a package. For our coding activities, we will organize modules into a package. In this coding activity, we will define a package. Let's go to the Explorer and right-click it and go to New Folder. And then let's name the folder Geometry. Hit Enter. Next, we'll create the init.py file and save it to the geometry directory. So let's go to File, New Text File, click Select a Language, search for Python. Click it, go to File, Save, double-click the geometry directory, and then let's name it like this. So start with 2 underscores, and then init, and then 2 underscores, and then hit Enter. So you now have the init.py file. And again, when this file is inside of this directory, Python will recognize that directory as a package when you run your program. Next, we will define a module and place it into that package. So let's go create a new .py file named rectangle.py. So make sure that the rectangle.py file is saved into the geometry package. So in the rectangle module, we'll define 2 functions. So let's come here and let's name this one perimeter. And then this will have 2 parameters. So let's name this one width and this one length. And let's go in the body of the function and return this formula. So type return 2 multiplied by, and in parentheses, you're going to say width plus length. Let's go define a second function named area, and let's have 2 parameters. So this will be width, that will be length, and let's have it return width multiplied by length. Save the module. Now you should have the circle.py file from the last coding activity, so you can drag that into the geometry package and move it. Next, we'll import the circle and rectangle modules from the geometry package. Let's switch to the main.py file and then type import and the name of the package geometry, and then type dot circle. So this imports the circle module from the geometry package. Let's select this line and copy it, and let's go to the next line and paste. And let's replace circle with rectangle. And that will import the rectangle module from the geometry package. Now let's go call a function from those modules. Let's write our print function. And in the parentheses, select geometry.circle and copy it, and then paste. And from there, let's call the circle module's area function. So type dot area and parentheses. And then let's pass in a value for the radius. Let's select this line and copy it, go to the next line and paste, and replace circle with rectangle. So the rectangle module's area function accepts 2 arguments. So we got 20 for the width, type a comma, and let's put another number for the length. Let's run our program. And you see areas for the circle and rectangle. We could use the from import statement to import multiple modules from a package on a single line. So let's select these lines and replace them with from and the name of the package, geometry, and then import. And let's import the circle module, type a comma, and then rectangle. And let's come here in our print function and delete geometry into dot. And let's do the same here. So our from import statement imports the circle and rectangle modules from the geometry package on a single line. So let's test running our program, and you see we get the areas still. Next, let's use an alias for the circle and rectangle modules. So let's come here after circle, type space and then as, and let's write an alias of CIR. Let's come here after rectangle and then type as again, and let's use an alias of REC. So let's come here in our print function and replace this with CIR, and this will be REC. So that takes care of creating the aliases. We can run our program and confirm that we still get our areas. Next, we'll import a function from a packaged module. So let's come here and type from, and then specify the geometry package, and then dot, and we'll specify the circle module. And then from there, let's type import, and we'll import the circumference function. Let's go to the next line and call the circumference function. So type print, and in the parentheses, just type circumference in parentheses, and pass a value in there. Let's run our program, and we get a circumference. And last, we could use an alias for our function import. So let's come here right after circumference, and then type as, and we can go for CIR. And let's come here and replace circumference with CIR. Let's run our program and confirm that the circumference is still output. Our next topic is object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming, or OOP, is a programming standard that's used to organize software into objects, and these objects consist of data and procedures. Data is information that's used to describe the object, and procedures are instructions that operate on the data. Benefits of object-oriented programming are it protects your software as data, and you can use it to build flexible, reusable, and collaborative solutions for your software. Some terms for object-oriented programming are classes, objects, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, composition, and abstraction. Our next topic is classes and objects. A class is a file that describes data attributes and methods. You can think of a class as a blueprint for building objects, and the code within a class must be indented. Classes can be stored in modules, and classes are imported and used across your program. An object is an instance of a class or an independent copy of a class that resides in computer memory while using your program. You can create multiple independent instances out of a class. A data attribute is a variable that stores data about an object, such as a name and age and so on, and data attributes are commonly accessed through methods. Methods are instructions that change or access object data. The init method is required for all Python classes, and it's used to initialize an object's data attributes, and it's automatically called when the class is instantiated. The self parameter refers to the object that a method operates on, and this too is required in every class method. Hiding data attributes makes class data private, and it protects data from direct access and corruption, and it's done by adding 2 underscores next to the attribute. For coding activities, we will define a class, instantiate a class, add the init parameters, define the str method, and store a class in a module. In this coding activity, we will define a class. So let's come here and type the keyword class. space, and let's name the class animal. Type a colon and then hit enter. Next, we will define the initializer method. So recall that the initializer method is required in all Python classes. It's used to initialize an object's data attributes, and it will be automatically called when the class is instantiated. So let's type def space 2 underscores and then init 2 underscores parentheses and a colon. So in the parentheses, let's go ahead and type self. So recall that the self parameter refers to the object that the method operates on, and this is required in every class method. So let's go inside of the body of the init method and define our data attributes. So type self and then a dot and then 2 underscores. So what this means is we're about to make the data attribute private so that it can only be used inside of this class. So let's name the data attribute name, and then let's assign it 2 quotes. So that's our first data attribute. Let's create another. So select this line and copy it, go to the next line and paste, and let's name this species. So we now have 2 data attributes in our class. Next, we will define setter methods. So the setter methods will be used to change the data attribute values or mutate them. So let's come here and hit enter a few times and hit the backspace key so that we're aligned with the init method. And then type def space, and let's name this set underscore name. Type your parentheses and a colon. So in the parentheses, type self. So the self parameter is required in every method in a class. So type a comma, and then let's create a parameter named name. And then let's go in the body of the set name method. And then again, we'll say self dot 2 underscores and then name. So we're referring to the data attribute. And then we're going to assign it the parameter name. So that takes care of our first setter method. So we can come here and copy the entire method. Let's go down a few times and hit the backspace key so that we're aligned, and then paste. And let's rename this as set species. And then let's name the parameter species again. So wherever you have name, just replace it with species. So come here, and this will be self dot underscores species. And this will be the species parameter. So that takes care of the setter methods. Last, we will define getter methods. So the getter methods will retrieve the data attributes data. So let's come here, hit the backspace key, and then type def, and let's name this get underscore name. Type your parentheses, and let's pass the self parameter in there. So type a colon, hit enter, and then type return, and we will be returning self, and then dot, 2 underscores, and then name. So that returns the name data attribute. So let's select this method and copy it. Come here and paste, and this will be get species. And change that to species as well. So that takes care of defining the class. Next, we'll instantiate the class. So recall instantiation means creating an object. So let's come here and hit enter a few times and hit the backspace key until you're at the edge of the number line. And then let's create a variable named animal underscore 1. And then type space and then equals and then animal and then parentheses. So this statement will instantiate the animal class. And once this is instantiated, the initializer method is going to be called automatically. And animal 1 now refers to an animal object. So let's go to the next line, and what we're going to do next is call the setter methods. So let's type animal 1 and then dot, and then set name, and then parentheses. So in there, let's pass a name of Max. So by calling this set name method, we are basically calling this setter here. So Max is going to be the argument that's assigned to this parameter variable, and Max is going to be now assigned to the data attribute name for the object. So let's select this line and copy it and go to the next line and paste. And this time let's call the set species method. So replace name with species. And then let's change this to dog. So let's go create another animal object. So just hit enter a few times, and then let's name this reference variable animal2. And then we're going to say it's equal to animal again, and then parentheses. So that creates a second animal object. So let's use our animal2 reference variable to call the setter methods for that object. So we're going to come here and say animal2, and then set name again. Type your parentheses, and let's name this Felix. Let's go to the next line and type animal2 again, and then type dot set species. Type your parentheses, and for the species, let's have that be a cat. So that takes care of creating two objects and calling their setter methods. Next, we'll call the object's getter methods. So let's hit enter a few times and then type the print function. So in there, let's type name and then a colon. And let's go combine this with a call to the getName method for one of the objects. So type a comma and then animal1 dot getName and then parentheses. So this will retrieve the value of the name attribute of this animal1 object. So at this point it'll be Max. So let's go here and select this line and copy it and then paste. Let's name this species, and we'll call the getSpecies method. Let's hit enter, and let's write a print function, so we'll have an extra space. And then let's go call the getters for the animal2 object. So you can select these lines here, copy them, come here and paste, and then just replace animal1 with animal2. So that takes care of creating the two animal objects and calling their setter methods and their getter methods. So let's run our program. So you see we get a name of Max and dog for the first animal object, and then Felix and cat for the second animal object. Next, we'll modify the initializer method's parameters so that we don't have to call the setter methods. So let's scroll up, and then in here, in the init method, type a comma, and let's create a parameter of name, type another comma, and let's name this species. And in here, let's replace the quotes with the name parameter, and let's replace these quotes with species. Now let's scroll back down, and let's delete these setter methods. So now that we've changed the init method, it's expecting two arguments, i.e. name and species. So as soon as we create the object or instantiate the class, we can just come in here and pass the arguments that we want, and those arguments will be assigned to these data attributes here. So let's come here, and then let's type Max as the first argument. That'll be for the name, type a comma, and then dog for the second argument. So that'll be for the species. So I'm just going to delete and bring these closer. And then let's come here and pass two arguments. So we'll call this Felix, type a comma, and then that'll be cat. So we are now setting the object's data attributes in one line. So we can easily create more objects, and this is being done without us having to call these setter methods. So let's run our program, and you see that we get the same results. Next, we'll define the str method. So this method can return a string representation of the object when its reference variable is referenced. So let's go into class, and hit enter a few times and make sure that you're aligned with the getter method, and then type def and then 2 underscores str 2 underscores parentheses self and then colon. And let's go in the body of the str method and then type return, and let's return an f string. So type f and then your quotes, and then let's write up a string like this. So when you're done, your f string should have 2 placeholders for the name and the species data attributes, and just have it written like this. So I just have a label here for name and species, and then 2 line breaks at the end. So let's come here where we have these print statements and then delete them. And then let's just type our print function again, and this time just put animal1 in there. And then let's copy this line and then paste, and let's replace this with animal2. Now let's run our program, and you see that we get our f strings returned per object. Next, we'll store the animal class in a module. So let's create a .py file, and let's save that file in the same location as the main file and name that file as animal. So it should be animal.py. Now let's switch to the main file. Now select the animal class and then cut it. Let's switch to animal.py and then paste. Save the animal.py file, and let's switch to the main file. So now our animal class is in its own module. So next we will have to import the animal in order to use it in the main file. So here at the top, type import and then animal. And then over here, we're going to say animal, then dot the animal constructor. And then let's do the same here. So run your program, and if you get these outputs, then everything works. Our next topic is inheritance. Inheritance allows a class to acquire the data attributes and methods of another class. The class that does the acquiring is called a subclass, and the class where the data attributes and methods are inherited from is called a superclass. One of the benefits of using inheritance is it prevents duplicate code in the subclass because it will acquire the data attributes and methods of the superclass. For our coding activities, we will apply inheritance. Next, we'll define subclasses that inherit from the animal class shown here. So let's create 2 .py files named cat and dog. So the cat.py and dog.py files will serve as modules for the subclasses. So let's define the dog class. So switch to dog.py and then type class and then dog, type your parentheses and a colon. Let's go in the body and then define its initializer method. So type def and then 2 underscores init 2 underscores parentheses and a colon, and in the parentheses let's type self, type a comma, and let's create a parameter named habitat. Let's go in the body of the initializer method and then create a data attribute named habitat as well. So type self and then a dot, 2 underscores, and then habitat, and then type equals, and then let's go assign it the habitat parameter. So copy that, come here and paste, and that takes care of the initializer method. Let's go define setter and getter methods for the dog class. So let's go here and let's define a setter method named setHabitat. And in the parentheses, let's go here and type self. Let's create a parameter named habitat. And then let's select the statement here at the top, copy it. And let's go here in the body of the setter and then paste. Let's go define the getter method. So type def and let's name this getHabitat. Type your parentheses and a colon, and in the parentheses type self. And then we'll have it return the habitat data attribute. So type return and then self, and then dot, 2 underscores, habitat. So that takes care of the getter method. So we'll do exactly the same thing for the cat class. So you can select all the methods here and copy them, and then switch to cat.py. And then let's go create the cat class first. So type class, and then cat, type your parentheses, and a colon, and then hit enter, and then go paste those methods. So that takes care of the cat class. Next, we'll have the cat and dog classes inherit from the animal class. So let's come here right before class, and then let's import the animal class from the animal module. So type from, and then the animal module, and then import, and then animal. So let's copy animal with the uppercase A, and then let's go here in the parentheses of cat and paste. So that right there will make the cat class inherit from the animal class. So now cat has acquired the animal class's attributes and setter and getter methods. So let's go do the same for the dog class. So you can select this line and copy it, the from statement, and then let's come here to the dog class, and then right above that, let's paste. Let's get animal and copy that. Let's come here and paste as well. Now the dog class inherits from the animal class. Next, we use the super function to initialize the name and species data attributes inherited from the animal class. So let's come here, and then let's create 2 parameters. So let's name this name, type a comma, and let's name this species, and then type a comma. Now let's go in the body of the initializer method and then type super, and then parentheses. So the super function refers to an instance of the superclass, so in this case animal. So we're going to use it to call the animal instance's initializer method. So let's come here and type a dot, and then 2 underscores, and then init, and then 2 underscores, and then parentheses. So inside of there, we will pass the name and species parameters. So you can come here and put name in there, and then species. So that takes care of initializing the name and species data attributes inherited by the dog class. So let's go do the same thing for the cat class. So you can select the super statement here and copy it, and then let's switch to cat.py. So before we paste that, let's create parameters in here. So type name, and then type a comma, and then species, and then type a comma. And let's go in its initializer method and then paste. And that takes care of the initialization of the name and species data attributes inherited by cat. Next, we'll define str methods for the subclasses. So let's come here and then type def, and then the str method. So type 2 underscores, str, 2 underscores, your parentheses, and then self. Type your colon. Let's go in the body and create a variable. So let's type sub underscore str as the variable name, and then let's assign it an f string. So type your f and then your quotes. So this f string is going to be the data attribute for habitat. So let's create a label named habitat. Type your colon, and then let's put our placeholders, and in there type self, and then dot, 2 underscores, and then habitat. Now we're also going to use the super function again to call the animal instance's str method. So if you switch to animal.py, you see that its str method shows that it returns a combination of name and species. So we're going to use that and then combine that with the habitat back in the cat class. So let's come here and then let's type return, and then we're going to say super, and then parentheses, and then we'll call the animal instances str method. So type dot, and then 2 underscores, str, 2 underscores, and then parentheses. And that right there is going to yield the name and species string. So we're going to combine that with the sub str variable. So let's come here and then let's copy that and then paste that there. So now we're going to have name, species, and the habitat. We can also come here and then put a line break right there, or a new line character. So let's select this str method and copy it, and then switch to dog.py, and then let's paste it. And dog.py now has its own str method. So let's save all of your files. So go to File, Save All. And now we will create instances of the dog and cat class. So let's switch to our main.py file, and then let's import the dog class from the dog module. So type from, and then dog, and then import dog. Let's go import the cat class from the cat module. So type from cat, and then import the cat class. Next, let's create an instance of the dog class. So let's come here and type dog1 for a variable, and then let's assign it dog, parentheses, and then let's give it its 3 parameters. So this will be the name. Next will be its species of dog, and then let's make its habitat a home. So let's go to the next line and create an instance of the cat class. So hit enter and then type cat1 for the variable name, and then let's assign it cat, and then parentheses, and then let's pass its 3 arguments. So let's name the cat Felix. Its species will be cat, and let's make its habitat a home as well. So let's go print out the dog1 and cat1 variables. So print out dog1, and let's go to the next line and print out cat1. So these should call the str methods per instance. So let's run our program. So if you did everything correctly, you should see the names, the species, and the habitats. Our next topic is polymorphism. Polymorphism means many forms. It offers flexibility by letting you change the behavior of an object and its form. With polymorphism, a subclass can override the methods inherited from its superclass, thus modifying the behavior of the subclass. And the isInstance function checks if an object is an instance of a class or superclass. This offers flexibility when working with various subclass instances in your program. For our coding activities, we will override a method and use the isInstance function. In this coding activity, we will demonstrate polymorphism by overriding. So let's open up the animal.py file, and let's define a method that returns a string. So let's come here and let's define our method. So let's name it makeSound. Type your parentheses and self, type your colon, and let's have it return a string. So type return and then growl. Save the file. Next, let's switch to the main.py file, and let's import the dog class and the cat class. So type from, and then the dog module, import, and then dog, and let's import the cat. So type from cat, and then import cat. Now let's create a dog object and a cat object. So let's create a reference variable of dog1, and then let's assign it our dog constructor, and let's pass it some values. So let's give it a name of Max, a type of dog, and a habitat of home. Let's go to the next line and create a cat object. So let's name the variable cat1 and assign it the cat constructor. And let's give it a name of Felix, a type of cat, and a home habitat. So let's go to the next line and call the makeSound method. So write your print function, and in there type dog1 and then dot makeSound. Type your parentheses. Let's go to the next line and do the same thing but with the cat. So say cat1 and then dot makeSound. Let's run our program. And you see there we get growl for both calls. So next we're going to redefine these methods, but in the subclasses, and that way they will override the make sound method. So let's switch to animal.py and then select the make sound method and copy it. And then switch to cat.py. Let's come here and paste. And let's change this to meow. And then let's go to the dog.py file. And let's paste the make sound method and change this to woof. Save all your files. Let's switch to the main.py file. And let's rerun the program. And you see that the overridden methods are now called. So that is polymorphism through method overriding. Next we'll use isInstance. So what I have here is a dog and a cat object. So you can go and create these quickly. So let's come here and import the animal class. So let's type from, and then the animal module, import, and animal. So we'll use the isInstance function to check if dog and cat are animal types. So since dog and cat inherit from animal, that makes them animal types. So let's come here and we can say if, and then isInstance, and then parentheses. So the first argument will be the reference to the object that you're going to be checking. So let's go with dog1 and then type a comma. And then what comes next is the class type or class. So we're checking to see if dog1 is an animal. So let's type animal. So if this is true, we can just print that is a dog. Next, let's check if cat is an animal. So you can select these, copy them, come here, and then paste. And let's replace dog1 with cat1, and then change this to that is a cat. So let's run our program. And you see that we get those outputs. Now, let's go back and change this to dog. And let's change that to cat. So we're using the isInstance to check if dog1 is a dog, which it is, and if cat1 is a cat. So let's go ahead and run this again, and you see that we get the same results. So let's come here, and let's switch this to cat, and switch that to dog. So when you go ahead and run this, you're going to see that we get no output because the conditions are false. Dog is not a cat, and cat is not a dog. So last we use the isInstance function to determine an instance before adding it to a list. So here I have 2 dog objects and 2 cat objects. So you can create these quickly and just make sure that you have these imports. So I have the dog, the cat, and the animal classes imported. So let's come here and let's create a list. So let's name this dog underscore list. And let's assign it 2 square brackets, and that'll be an empty list. Next, let's define a function. So type def, and let's name this function add dog. So we're going to use this function to add these animals to our dog list. So let's type our parentheses, and let's create a parameter of animal. And let's come here and type our colon. And then let's go inside of the body of the function and refer to this dog list globally. So type global and then dog list. So this will allow us to refer to this dog list in this add dog function. So let's go in here. And what we'll do is we'll use the isInstance function to check if animal is a dog before adding it to the dog list. So let's come here and we'll say if isInstance, and in the parentheses type animal, the parameter, type a comma, and then we're checking if this is a dog. Let's type our colon, and if this is true, we will add animal to the dog list. So let's type dog list, and let's call the append method. So type dot append, parentheses, and then in there type animal. And after that, we can print a message to say that the dog's been added. So let's just say dog added. Now, if this condition is false, let's go here and write our else statement. And we can print that is not a dog. Okay, so next we will add the dog or the cat to this list and see what happens. So let's go here and hit the backspace key so that we're outside of this function. So type add dog in parentheses, and let's test this with dog1. Let's run our program. And you see that we get the message that the dog's been added. So let's attempt to add the cat. So let's add cat1 or cat2, and let's run this. And you see that we get the message that that is not a dog. Our next topic is the OS module. The OS module provides functions for interacting with your operating system. You can do things like get your operating system's info, create directories, delete directories, and so on. For our coding activities, we will make directories, make nested directories, determine the current working directory, and remove directories. In this coding activity, we will make a directory. So let's import the OS module. So type import OS and hit enter a few times. So to make a directory, you use the mkdir function. So type OS and then dot mkdir and type your parentheses. So in the parentheses, you put the name of the folder. So let's put the single quotes and let's call the folder test. Let's run our program. And you'll see here in the Explorer that the test folder or directory has been created. Next, we'll make a nested directory. So let's go here after test and type a /, and let's name the nested directory subtest. And let's run the program. So when you go to your Explorer and expand test, you see that we have the subtest folder in there. Next, we'll determine the current working directory. So let's come here and replace mk with ch. So chdir will switch to a directory. So right now it's going to switch to the subtest directory. So let's come here and write our print function. So in there, type OS, and to get our current working directory, we call the getCwd function. So type dot getCwd and type your parentheses. So let's run our program, and you see that right here, it tells us that we are in the subtest directory. So let's come here and change this to just test. So this is going to switch us to the test directory. And now let's run our program again. And you see right here, it shows our current directory is test. Next, we'll remove a directory. So let's come here and delete this print function. And just make sure that you switch to the test directory. So now that we're in the test directory, we will remove the subtest directory. So come here and type OS and then .rmdir. Type your parentheses, and in there, let's type subtest. Let's run our program. And you see in the Explorer that the subtest folder has been removed. And last, we will remove multiple directories. So let's write that statement to recreate the subtest directory. So come here and type OS and then .mkdir, and in there type test / and subtest. Let's run the program and confirm that the subtest directory has been placed there. So with that, let's replace this with remove dirs. Let's run our program, and you see that it deletes all of the folders. Our next topic is generators. A generator is a special iterable of dynamically generated elements. You can think of the iterable as a tuple or a list, and the generated elements are created on demand from a generator function using the yield keyword. The generator function's normal code execution will be suspended until the generator object is iterated through. Some benefits of using generators are that they generate elements on demand, they're memory efficient, and they're faster than creating lists. For our coding activities, we will create a generator and iterate a generator. In this coding activity, we will create a generator function that yields even numbers. Let's define a function named generateEven. And let's declare a parameter named n. Let's go in the body of the function and create a for loop. So type for I in range, parentheses, and in the parentheses, type n for the parameter, and then type a colon. Let's go in the body of the for loop and type yield. So we will yield I multiplied by 2. So this will return an even number per iteration. Let's hit enter and hit the backspace key. And let's print a message that reads generation complete. So once the generator object has been iterated through, this will be printed out. Next, we'll create a generator object, and that will be done by calling the generateEven function and assigning it to a variable. So let's come here and hit enter a few times and hit the backspace key so that you're outside of that function. Let's create a variable named even numbers. And then let's assign it the generateEven function call. Type your parentheses, and let's pass in a value of 8. So this statement creates our generator object, and the even numbers variable references the generator object. So 8 will be passed into the generateEven function, and through this loop, it will generate a sequence of numbers from 0 to 7. So when we get to the yield part, we'll start off by yielding 0 multiplied by 2, so that will return 0 and generate an element for that, and 0 will be placed in that element. So the next time around, I will be 1, then we will yield I multiplied by 2, so that gets returned and placed in another element. So for every iteration, the yield statement is returning a value and placing it in a dynamically generated element, i.e. in our generator. And our last step is to iterate the generator. So let's come here and hit enter a few times, and let's create a for loop. So type for I in, and then even numbers, and then a colon. And let's go in the body of the loop and print out I. Now, once the generator object has been iterated through, then the generateEven function will resume normal execution. So this statement here will be executed. So let's run our program. And you see the even numbers displayed. And that completes the generator object iteration. And after that, you see that this message, generation complete, is displayed. Our next topic is decorators. A decorator is a special function that can modify the behavior of another function without affecting the original function's code. A decorator must contain a wrapper function which executes its code before and after the original function is called. Decorators are used because they add extra functionality to functions, classes, and methods. For our coding activities, we will create a decorator. In this coding activity, we will create a decorator. So first, let's define a function named start. Let's go in its body and print the message started. So the start function will be passed to the decorator function, which we will create next. So let's go above it and let's define our decorator function. So let's name it my decorator. Let's go in this parentheses and create a parameter named func. So the func parameter will reference the start function once passed to the decorator. Let's go in the body of the decorator function and define the wrapper function. So let's name it my wrapper. So the wrapper function will execute statements before and after it calls the start function, and it'll also return that start function. So let's hit enter, And let's print a message that gets displayed before the start function is called. So let's have it read before. Let's go to the next line and create a variable name result. And let's assign it a call to the start function. So we'll use our parameter func and then type your parentheses. So that right here will call the start function. And then let's go after that and let's print the message that gets displayed after the function is called. So let's have it read after. And let's hit enter and let's have it return the start function reference. So type return and then result. Let's hit enter and make sure that you are tabbed with the myWrapper functions def keyword. So now we're in the myDecorator function. So we'll need this one to return the wrapper function. So type return and then myWrapper. So next we'll mark the start function so it can be passed to the decorator function. So let's come here and then type the @ symbol and the name of the decorator function, myDecorator. Now let's hit enter a few times and hit the backspace key. So now we will start the decorator, so call the start function. Let's run our program. And you'll see that when the start function is passed to the decorator function, our wrapper function gets called and the before message is printed out. The wrapper function then calls the start function. As you can see here, the started message is displayed. And then the wrapper function resumes and executes this statement, which gets called after the start function. So we get our after message. Our next topic is list comprehensions. A list comprehension is a statement used to create a new list from an iterable such as a list, a string, or a tuple. List comprehensions are created from single-line for loops, and they can be used to filter elements or perform operations on unfiltered elements. For our coding activities, we will create list comprehensions. In this coding activity, we will create a list comprehension of squared numbers. First, let's create a list of numbers. So let's create a variable named numbers, and let's assign it a list of 6 numbers. Next, we'll create our list comprehension. Let's go to the next line and create a variable named squared numbers. So the squared numbers variable will reference the list generated from our list comprehension. So let's go type equals and then square brackets. So this is where we write our list comprehension. So we start off with an expression. So type I and then 2 asterisks 2. So this will raise I to the power of 2. So that's the expression for our list comprehension. And what comes next is a for loop that will iterate our numbers list. So type for I in and then numbers. So what I have highlighted here is our list comprehension. So when this gets executed, we are going to iterate through the numbers list. And for every iteration, I will be raised to the power of 2. So the result of that expression will be appended to the new list that's generated from this list comprehension. And that list will be referenced by the squared numbers variable. So let's go to the next line and let's print out the list. So print squared numbers. Let's run our program. And you see the squared numbers in the new list. Next, we'll write a list comprehension that generates a list of odd numbers. So let's select these lines and delete them. And let's create a variable named odd numbers. Let's assign it our square brackets. And let's write the expression I multiplied by 1. Hit space. Let's write our for loop to iterate the numbers list. And then hit space. So next we'll write a condition to determine if I is an odd number. So type if, and then I, modulo or percentage symbol, 2. And then type 2 equals, and then 1. So if I divided by 2 gives a remainder of 1, then that is an odd number. So that number will be multiplied by 1 and then appended to the list. Let's go print out the list. So print odd numbers. Let's run our program. And you see that we get our list of odd numbers. Our next topic is Lambda functions. A Lambda function is a single line function that lets you define functions quickly. In this coding activity, we will define and call a Lambda function. In this coding activity, we will define a Lambda function that raises a number to a power. So what I have here is some code that's commented out, and you see that this is a function that has a parameter x, and we return x raised to the power of 2. So we're going to write the Lambda function equivalent of this regular function. So let's go here, and then let's create a variable named square number. And then let's assign it our Lambda function. So type equals. So we start with the Lambda keyword. And after that, we specify our parameter. So type space, and let's give the parameter a name of x. So x right here is the equivalent of x here. So after x, type a colon. And what comes next is the expression. So this is the equivalent of what happens in the body of a function. So let's come here and type space, and then x, 2 asterisks, and then a 2. So this right here is our expression. So you see that it is the equivalent of writing a statement in the body of a regular function. And this gets returned. So what I have highlighted here is our Lambda function. So let's go to the next line and use the Lambda function. So hit enter and create a variable named result. And then go assign it square number, and then your parentheses. And then in there you pass an argument. So I'll pass an argument of 5. So this is the equivalent of calling our function. So let's go print our result. And let's run our program. So you see that we get 25. Next, we'll define a Lambda function with multiple arguments. So what I have here is a function that's commented out that has 2 parameters. And this is what we're going to define the Lambda function equivalent of. So let's come here and let's create a variable named product. And then let's assign it our Lambda function. So type equals and then Lambda. And then let's specify the first parameter A, type a comma, and then the second parameter B. And then type a colon. Let's write the expression A multiplied by B. So this is our Lambda function equivalent of this function that's commented here. So let's go use the Lambda function. So go to the next line and create a variable named result. And then let's assign it the call. So type product, parentheses, and then pass your 2 arguments. So I'll go for 5, comma, and then a 10. Let's go to the next line and print out the result. Let's run our program. And you see that 5 gets multiplied by 10, and we get 50. Our final topic is PyPI and pip. PyPI or PyPI stands for Python Package Index, and it is a centralized repository that holds Python packages. And pip stands for pip installs packages, and this is a tool that's used for working with PyPI. For our activities, we will install pip, use pip, install a package, and uninstall a package. In this activity, I'll cover installing pip. So once you have Python installed, pip will be installed too. So let's open up the terminal, and you can also open up your command prompt. But I'm going to go here to terminal and then new terminal. So what we're going to do is check the version of pip that's installed. So type pip space 2 dashes and version, and then hit enter. So this should show you pip and the version number and the location where pip is installed. So now we've confirmed pip is installed, we could use it by running some commands. So let's come here and then type pip space and help. Hit enter. So when you scroll up, you see that this gives you all the available commands in pip and pretty much information about them. So we could get help about a specific command. So let's come here and type pip space help space, and let's go for the install command. So type install. Hit enter. So when you scroll up, you see that this gives you a lot more information about the install command. So you can see here it tells you the types of options you can run on it. and so on. And another command is this. So type pip space and then list. Hit enter. So this will show you all the packages that you've installed. So pip is the only one for now. Next, I'll cover installing a package. So let's come here and type pip space install space and then type Pygame. So Pygame is the name of a package that's used for creating Python games. So let's hit enter. And you see that it starts the installation process. So now that the package has been installed, we can confirm by doing this. So type pip space and then list. And then you can see now that Pygame has been installed. Next, we'll import Pygame. So let's come here and type pip show Pygame. Hit enter. So this will display information about Pygame and its location. So place your mouse over the path here and then hold the control key on your keyboard and then click. And this will open up a new Visual Studio window with the site packages folder referenced. So we're going to create a .py file in there. So go to File, New Text File, click Select a Language, type Python, click it, and then go to File, Save. And you'll see that you're in the site packages folder. So let's name this file main and hit enter. And now we have our main.py. And then in here, just type import Pygame. And that statement imports Pygame. And finally, we will uninstall a package. So let's come here and then type pip space uninstall space and then Pygame. Hit enter. And you'll be prompted to select yes or no. So type Y and hit enter. And you should get a message saying that Pygame has been uninstalled. So let's go and confirm that. So type pip space and then list. Hit enter. And you see that Pygame is no longer there. Next, we'll start our projects. For project 1, we will create a palindrome checker program. So a palindrome is a word or phrase that when reversed is identical. First, we'll define a function that checks if the word or phrase passed to it is a palindrome, and it will return true if it's a palindrome or false otherwise. So let's define a function named as palindrome. So come here and type def is palindrome. Type your parentheses, and in the parentheses, let's create a parameter named word. So this will refer to the word or phrase passed to the function. Type a colon and hit enter. Next, we'll create a variable that will be assigned the word once it's processed. So let's name this variable stripped word, and then let's assign it 2 quotes so it's empty. So we want to make sure that the word or phrase is converted to lowercase letters. So let's come here and create a for loop. So type for I in and then word. And to convert this into lowercase letters, we call the lower method. So type dot lower and parentheses and a colon. So our loop is going to have the lowercase letters to iterate through, and each letter will be assigned to I. So another thing we want to do is make sure that there are no spaces in our word or phrase. So let's go inside of the body of the loop and let's type our condition. So we'll say if, and we want to check to see if I is not white space. So type not I dot is space and then type a colon. So if I is not white space, then we want to concatenate it to the stripped word variable. So let's come here and then we'll type stripped word plus equals and then I. Now let's hit enter and hit the backspace key a few times until we are aligned with the for loop. So now we're outside of this for loop. And last, we are going to compare the stripped word with its inverse. So we're going to reverse it. So type return and then stripped word. And then let's go ahead and type 2 equals. And then let's type stripped word again. and we're going to slice it. So type the square brackets, type 2 colons, and then a -1. So this right here is going to reverse the stripped word. So if the stripped word and the reversed stripped word are identical, then this is going to return true, or it's going to return false otherwise. Next, let's define a function that displays a message when the program ends. So let's come here and then type def, and let's name the function end program. Type a parentheses, a colon, and hit enter, and let's print the message goodbye. Last, we'll define the function that starts the program. Let's come here, and then let's define a function named start program, and then hit enter. Next, we'll create a variable that will control a loop. So let's name the variable try again, and let's assign it a string of y as in yes. Next, let's go write a while loop that will keep the program running. So type while, and then we're going to say while try again is equal to y, and then a colon. So provided try again is equal to y, the loop runs. So next we will collect input for the phrase or the word that's going to be checked if it's a palindrome or not. So hit enter, and then let's create a variable named word, and then let's assign it the input function, and let's give it this prompt: enter a word. Next we'll call the isPalindrome function. So let's come here and let's write an if statement, and then we're going to say isPalindrome, and then type a parentheses and a colon. So inside of the parentheses we will pass word. So if this is true, let's print out an F string that says word is a palindrome. So hit enter, and then print your F string. And then let's hit enter and hit the backspace key and write an else statement. So if that condition is false, we'll print out word is not a palindrome. So you can select this line, copy it, come here and paste, and then just put a not right here. And let's hit enter a few times and hit the backspace key, and then we will prompt for the user to try again. So type try again, and then let's assign it the input function, and let's give it this prompt of try again, yes or no. So let's hit enter, and let's hit the backspace key so that we're outside of the while loop, and let's call the end program function. So type end program and parentheses. Let's hit enter again and hit the backspace key so that we're outside of the start program function, and let's call the start program function. So type start program parentheses. Let's run our program. So we're going to test some popular palindrome words. So let's start with madam and hit enter. So madam is a palindrome because the word when spelled backwards is the same. So let's hit Y to try again and hit enter, and we'll test another one. So another popular palindrome word is radar. Hit enter, and you see that radar is a palindrome. Let's hit Y to try again, and let's test something that's not a palindrome. So I'll type yes, hit enter. So yes spelled backwards is not a palindrome. So let's go for a phrase. So enter Y to try again. And a popular palindrome phrase is never odd, never even. So let's put that there. And you can see that it includes an uppercase letter and some white space. So let's hit enter. And you see that I get never odd or never even is a palindrome. And you can type anything and hit enter to terminate your program. For project 2, we will create a word counter program. First, we'll define a function that counts the words in a sentence and returns that count. So let's come here and type def, and let's name the function count words. Type your parentheses, and in the parentheses, let's create a parameter named sentence. Come here and type your colon, and then hit enter. Next, we'll write a statement that splits the sentence and assigns each word into a list. So let's create a variable named words. And then let's assign it sentence, and then let's call the split method. So type dot split. So recall that the split method will use white space as a delimiter in a sentence, and then assign each word that's separated by the white space into a list. So let's go to the next line and let's create a variable named count. And let's assign it a value of 0. So this is going to serve as our word counter. Let's go to the next line and let's define a for loop that will iterate the words list. So type for and then I in words. Type a colon and then hit enter. So for every iteration, we will increment the word counter. So type count and then plus equals 1. And then let's hit enter a few times and hit the backspace key so that you're outside of the loop. And then let's go return the word counter. So type return and then count. Next, let's define a function that displays a message when the program ends. So let's hit enter and then come here and type def and let's name the function end program. Let's go in the body of the function and let's just print the message goodbye. So I have a new line character and then goodbye. And last, we'll define a function that starts the program. So let's come here, hit enter and hit the backspace key and then type def and let's name the function start program. Let's go in the body of the function. So first we'll initialize a variable that will control a loop. So let's call the variable try again and then let's assign it a string of y, as in yes. Let's hit enter a few times. So let's go create a while loop. So come here and type while and then we'll say try again equals and then y. Type a colon. So provided try again is equal to y, the loop will run. So let's hit enter. So we'll write a statement that will be used to collect the sentence. So let's create a variable named sentence and then let's assign it an input function. So type input and let's give it a prompt of enter a sentence. Next, we'll call the count words function and pass a sentence to it as an argument. So let's come here and hit enter and let's create a variable named result. And then let's assign it count words, parentheses. Let's get sentence and copy it and then paste it there. So when count words is called, it will return a count or a number and then assign that to the result variable. Next, let's go print the word count. So let's come here, hit enter, and let's write our print function. And in there, let's create an F string. So type F, then your quotes, and then we'll say word count, and then colon. Let's create a placeholder, and then pass result in there. And let's go create a statement that will prompt the user to try again. So hit enter, and then type try again. And then let's assign it an input function. So let's have the prompt read try again. Now let's call the end program function. So hit enter and hit the backspace key so that you're outside of the while loop. And then type end program and parentheses. And last, let's go start the program. So hit enter and then hit the backspace key so you're outside of the start program function and then call it. So type start program in your parentheses. Let's run our program. And you should be prompted to enter a sentence. So I'm going to enter this. So this sentence has 8 words. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And you should see your word count of 8. You can try again by entering Y. And then you can enter a different sentence. And this sentence has 3 words. So let's hit enter. You see that I get the word count of 3. And then you can enter anything that's not a Y and hit enter to terminate your program. So congratulations to everyone for completing the course. We will see you in the next one.